Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Fantastic Female Role Models. And today, our fantastic female role model is Claire. Claire, introduce yourself. Tell us all about you.
Cool. Hi, everybody. I'm Claire Connard, and my background is primarily in nonprofit fundraising, but focused in education and the arts. I grew up with music and theater as a big part of my life, so I kind of wanted to keep in that vein. So I did study theater in college, and it was performance focused, but I figured out pretty quickly that the life of a performer was something that was a little too brave for me, which I think any choice is brave, but like understanding that that was just not the life for me. I figured out pretty quickly that theater admin was something I wanted to do, and found my way into fundraising. So I'm excited to talk about it.
Cool. So you work for like a theater and you help them raise money to like keep things going.
Exactly. So my focus currently, my current job is
Hmm.
major gifts, which I work for. So I work for an organization in the Chicago area called Writers Theater.
Okay.
Look us up. We're super cool. But so my focus is with anyone who gives at our Directors Society level or higher. So it's $1,000 or higher a year. And I've had other experiences, like a lot of my past experience has been in higher education, particularly focused in like annual giving and student giving, which it tends to be more about participation and less dollar focused. So it's been interesting to kind of have that flip.
Switch. Yeah.
Yeah, but basically everything I do is to help I basically sell theater to people saying, love us, you love what we're doing, you love everything, you want us to keep doing it, please give us money.
Sounds like a
It's all
fantastic
about,
job.
I know, it's all about selling them a mission rather than a product. So it's really good because it's getting to say like, hey, this is a really important thing and you love it, so help us keep going. And most nonprofit theaters are really only about half, sometimes more, is of their total operating budget is funded through ticket sales.
Right.
So a lot, but sometimes it's also less than half. And really, fundraising is what is really keeping theaters going, especially right now with
Right. Of
coronavirus
course.
and
Yeah.
the pandemic. The fact that we can't be in these theater spaces right now, fundraising is more important than ever.
Right. So I assume that it was probably like it makes your job that much more important. Like I'm sure the people who are running your theater are like, gosh, isn't it great that Claire is doing this? Because if she wasn't, then we'd be doomed.
I will say that like this is probably the best fundraising team I've ever worked on. Like, and I've worked on some really great teams. Like, it's like I've been very fortunate.
Right.
Because my first job out of school was working for Lawrence University, where we met, became friends, all that good stuff. So my first job was working there in annual giving, and that was still like one of the best fundraising teams I'd ever worked on. And so it's like I've been very fortunate in that way.
Sure.
But this team, it's something about how we collaborate and work together, even with the digital space we have to work in now, I think has really made our work successful. And the fact that we have so many great supporters that want to see us around when all of this is over
Yeah. Right.
and don't want to see us go away. I think we're in a unique position because we are a theater in the North Shore of Chicago. So there's a lot of people who live in the North Shore that love having there's a few different theaters in the North Shore, but love having theater so close to home rather than
Sure.
having to go downtown always for theater.
Right.
So there's a lot of people that want to see us around and want to see us surviving. So I think we've had some really great supporters that are just like, here's money, keep going.
Yeah. Take it. Well, I think you guys are probably in a really great position too, because you're in a city like Chicago where you would just have so many people you can even ask compared to like smaller states or smaller venues that are in places that, they might have people who want it, but they can't necessarily give the kind of sums of money that are required to keep a theater open. So
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
yeah, so you guys are in like a really kind of
We're in a good
sweet
spot.
spot to do your thing.
Yeah, and I mean, and I will say this for anyone who wants to pursue a career in like theater admin and whether it's fundraising or any other area, like
Mhm.
Chicago truly is one of the best places to be. It is, well, a lot of people when they think theater, they immediately think New York, which has such a thriving theater
Right.
scene. And they do have some great nonprofit theaters as well, but a lot of the theater there is commercial. Like with Broadway, it's all commercial.
Right.
Um, though there are some really great nonprofit theaters. I have a good friend from grad school who works for Signature Theater there.
Mhm.
And so like there is some great things like that. But here in Chicago, it's like this is the epicenter of nonprofit theater. You will
Right.
find like obviously we still get like Broadway in Chicago. Some we do have like for profit that comes through, but it is like the epicenter of storefront theater, sort of like the scrappy small let's like just put up a show kind of groups that are fantastic as well.
Mhm.
It really is one of the best places to be for this. It's why I moved to Chicago.
Right. It's all you've got it all figured out. Like you've had your,
Yeah.
yeah, sweet. It's always great when it works out.
It is like I always like literally even it was just yesterday. It was the end of my workday. I was like taking some letters, some solicitation letters, and dropping them in the mail. And then I'm walking back to my apartment. I'm like, hey, I live here. I do this. This is like I'm doing everything I want to be doing right now. It's kind of crazy.
Things have worked out.
Things have worked out. It's
Yeah.
good.
I paid for my degree and I'm using it and it's great.
Oh, it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. Ah, so amazing. Okay. So I've actually seen you perform. So I know that you were a great performer yourself. And you said that
Oh, thanks.
you're welcome. So you said that you've realized that you don't want to do that for a living. Is that something you still want to pursue, maybe like on the side? Or like,
I think I'm always open to that. I
mhm,
think it's something that like even when I was still working for Lawrence in like 2015, I ended up
mhm,
joining um, a comedy troupe in Oshkosh,
right,
and was doing some improv comedy, which I had never done before. So that was awesome.
yeah,
It was one of those things I'd always been afraid of. Like I'm like, I always have a script. What do I do when I don't have one? And it was one of those things where somebody I knew, who also was another Lawrence alum, um, it was a Bridget Zangs Christensen. She was now Bridget Zangs done. She was part of that troupe and was like, "Hey, we're having auditions," and I was like, "I'm just gonna do it and see what happens." And it's
might as
kind of
well.
like I did, and it was great because it was the artistic thing I was missing while I was still working in higher education. Because I loved working with students and being in that space was so rewarding, but I missed the artistic piece. And that is truly the thing for me is that I know that like the passion for me is arts and culture, and I really that is the space I would like to be in.
Mhm,
There's always naturally education pieces to that because
right,
for many reasons, including that actually for like theaters and arts organizations to be considered nonprofits, they have to have an education piece. They're actually considered education
right,
organizations,
sure,
tax wise,
yeah,
which is an interesting thing. But it was really like I knew that like that having that sort of artistic piece was important to me. Even if I wasn't directly doing it, I wanted it to be a part of my work and what I was striving toward. So I don't know if I will necessarily ever perform again, just because I do love what I do,
mhm,
and there are only so many hours in the day,
right,
unfortunately. But
yeah,
I think I do also love. Obviously, right now it's really hard to have like the experience of going to the theater,
sure,
but that even just being able to see shows, it's like I never have a feeling of like I'm missing out. Like I just feel like I get to appreciate this really cool thing and like everything I did learn as a performer, I think allows me to appreciate it in a different way than like the lay person going to see a show.
right,
So it's I mean I would definitely be open to performing again in the future. I just think I think I'm like pretty content with where I'm at.
gotcha. So so obviously like you got into this whole like fundraising gig, I'd say, like right out of college. And you majored in theater, so it's not like it like those things don't really match. necessarily. So, but now obviously you've gone back and you got a master's degree, right?
Mm-hmm.
So what was kind of like what was the focus of that master's degree, and how did that prepare you to better do the job you're doing now?
Yeah. So I'll start by saying that the best education when it comes to fundraising is literally just doing it, getting experience. Because I did have a number of internships in undergrad, some for theaters, some for like education institutions, all of which I think was great experience for my first like part of my like very early career. I say this as like early career, even though I'm like 29. I'm very young, but but the reason I ended up getting my degree, which was a master's in leadership for creative enterprises at Northwestern University,
Mhm.
I pursued that because I knew that I didn't have necessarily a fundamental base in sort of management, and that sort of that was something that I've seen time and again in various roles I've been in, that there are people who naturally like can just manage a team, manage other people in the process, and like they just got it, and that's great.
Right.
I've seen people put into those roles that didn't have any training, and that was not a natural inclination for them.
Right.
And I saw the struggle that was there,
Mhm.
and I wasn't sure exactly where I've been in leadership roles before, and like I know that I can do it, but it
Mhm.
was something where I wanted to have a more foundational arts administration base. And so this program was really great because it's a 1-year program. They do have opportunities if people want to do it part-time while working, because I have a friend who did that, and I think she finished it in under 3 years, about like just under.
Still
Um,
reasonable.
yeah, super reasonable. And I think what was great about it is it was kind of like I like to describe it as a business boot camp for artistic people. it's it really is like like I took classes in everything from cultural nonprofits, where we really dug into like everything from how do you come up with a strategic plan for your organization to what are some of the things you have to consider when it comes to fundraising, where because there are different sort of avenues of fundraising. If you want to focus on grants, you want to focus on more like one-on-one individual, there's a lot of different pieces to that.
Right.
So like I had a class like that where I learned some really great things. We had an organizational processes class, and that class focused on sort of these like 3 pieces of an organization, and like how you look at it is like not only like the strategic structure of like here's the CEO, here's the like these account managers, here's like this, but it's also looking at like what's the culture of your organization look like,
Mhm.
how have you like how, and we did a lot of case studies where we got to see how different organizations like thrived or didn't, and kind of
Okay.
what are some of the things you can think about if you're leading an organization or even a department, like how can you create a space that is going to be super successful and thrive. And I think it was I learned so many things from that. We had a finance class, which
You.
I know, but like again, it was something where like as much like well, yes, I didn't come out of it, being a CPA or anything, but
Mhm.
it gave me an understanding of like, okay, I can read a balance sheet, I can understand like I can develop a business plan to say, okay, if I wanted to start X business, this is what kind of money I'd need, how that cash flow would work throughout a year,
Right.
how would I bring in money, how much do I think I could bring in, really being able to just understand and talk about it.
Right.
Oh, I also had an arts and let's see, it was arts and entertainment law and ethics class that was really fun. That was taught by this professor who had been like a entertainment lawyer for like NBC. Like he worked with like SNL and other
Okay.
people. And what was great is he said, "Now this is not a law class like you would have in law school. Don't come into this class thinking that after doing this you're like I could do law school." It's like he's like, one, you're all very smart. You probably could if you wanted to, but know that this is not going to be like a law class. This is going to be I want you to come out of this understanding how to talk to a lawyer about things and understand what they're saying. And I'm like, great. It
Fantastic.
was it was so good because it really like, especially because arts and especially theater comes down to a lot of contract law. So it was
Right.
really good to understand, like, okay, these are the types of things you need contracts for. You can't just say, okay, we're going to do this.
Yeah.
The types of things that should probably be in there and you should think about, as well. And it really then like leads you down the path of understanding, okay, if you are going to hire someone for something or contract a commission for a play, it's like
Mhm.
you have to think about how much are we paying them, not only now, but like, are they getting paid per performance of their play? Are they getting paid for, like, what happens if this show does so well that it goes to Broadway? What does that mean? And really getting to like, it's a lot of the things and the nitty gritty that you really do have to think about when you're at that sort of leadership level. So
Right.
it was great. I learned a lot.
Yeah. It's like it's a lot of the things that like when you're maybe like an actress or if you're like just working at the theater, you don't have to think about because people have made that decision already. But like
Mm-hmm.
now you're in that role where it's like, oh, I haven't thought about this yet, but
Yeah.
I have to now. And it's like, I get that.
Yeah.
It's an intense shift in dynamic.
Definitely. And I think it was really great because because like the people in my program, it wasn't just people that were focused on arts nonprofits. Like I definitely, a lot of my good friends coming out of it are arts nonprofit people, just because we did take a lot of the same classes. But there were people that are focused on film and television production, people
Mhm.
that were going into the more looking at like advertising. There was it really anything you could deem creative. And that was also really cool because that it felt like I wasn't going to be stuck either, like saying
Sure.
like if I suddenly one day decided I don't want to do this anymore. I
Your
like having
skills are
options.
applicable elsewhere.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it led to like, I always think that the best ideas come out of opposition in the sense of like, you don't want to just have a bunch of people around you that are all going to agree with you because then you're only ever going to do the same things all the time.
Sure.
But it's good to have people around you to say, hey, I have this weird idea. What do you think? And it's usually somebody who works in a different area or has a
Mhm.
different focus, but that really can bring up like, hey, maybe we can take a piece of that and do something really cool. And it's just it allows you to be creative in a different way. So that's I wanted to be kind of surrounded by that energy too.
Mhm. To kind of get back to what you were saying earlier, it's interesting because, as a teacher, um, there's this huge push now in education to like have people work in teams and have people work collaboratively and like learn how to like do all that stuff, in a group. So like in math, you work in like groups of like four and like each person has a role and they're supposed to like each person's supposed to do a different part of the problem and like they're supposed to do that in like all the different classes. Like that's the
Mm-hmm.
big thing people are pushing, and it's nice to see that that's actually something that's valuable because like oftentimes I feel like people push these ideas into like teaching and then they're like, yeah, this is what businesses want, and then you're like, but do they
But is it
actually
though?
want that? Like, is that just what you've decided they wanted?
But is it though?
Yeah. And like it's good to see that like, you know, that actually does happen. Like there are roles in which all this collaborative learning is actually being used, and I'm sure it does in other ways than just this, but like it's nice to know, like especially when I was a teacher, it's like, am I actually preparing kids for like the future or am I just like setting them up for failure? And it's like, oh, it's good, we're fine.
I know. I think, and that's something that I do love about arts admin in general is that there really is like a role for everybody in the sense that there like a lot of it is like or like some of it is you are going to have to work with other people. It's kind of just the nature of being in anything, especially in theater. It's like you're even if someone is it's like even if someone's doing a one man show, you're never going to be the only person working on that show because you have a director, you have the
Right.
tech person who is like designing and or running all of the sound and lights.
Mm-hmm.
You have like all the designers designing every piece of it. It's like it's very rarely one person doing I mean, it's never one person doing all those things because I can't run up to the light board and suddenly turn something on. So
Not yet, just you wait.
not yet. Eventually, remote, we'll see.
Technology.
But it truly is something that is collaborative and does require you to work with other people. And the admin side of it is no different.
Mhm.
Like I definitely have my own projects and my own things that I develop and work on, but it's always like I always end up like working on pieces like with like my direct supervisor, that she and I collaborate on a lot of things. As a team, we work on a lot of things, on a number of different projects, especially when we have big events. And it's it's something that I think is a required skill. But what I particularly love about what I love about admin and particularly fundraising is that there truly is a role for everybody. There's like a lot of roles that focus on like the like fundraising events, like big galas and like other fundraising events. And like for us, like we have opening nights, all
Right.
of that kind of stuff. We have one person that she manages that stuff, and we all assist on different pieces of it. But like she's in charge of that, and so there is something for the person like that who like loves planning events and like activities and things
Yeah,
like
and
that.
like, getting fancy and doing her thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then you also have roles that are like grant writing that are very focused. It is like writing focused, but it's often an area that a lot of people who study philosophy end up in. And it's because it's weird. So many people
Yeah.
I've worked with who've been grant writers like have like their undergrad major was philosophy. Don't ask me why, but
Sure.
I mean, it is an area where like you do have to think about, okay, how do I talk like speak to what this foundation wants to support,
Right.
and explain to them why the things we're doing meet their criteria,
Absolutely. Yeah.
and
Yeah.
in a way that's not just like bullets. Like, how do I do this in a very like well written and creative and thoughtful way? So
Yeah.
like there are roles like that for someone who does love to write and analyze and like really think about those things.
Mhm.
Like there really is something for everybody. Um, it's also like an area that like we always need people to fundraise. Like in general, nonprofits, like fundraising is never usually the like number one job filled. Like it's something where I think there's a lot of opportunity. Um, and because nobody wakes up when they're 5 and says, I want to be a fundraiser. It's like you find it later. And
Right.
but the nice thing about it is like it's something like specifically fundraising, but also like arts admin in general. You can come to it at any point. It's never too late. Um, I think there's so many types of jobs that like people think by the time they get to a certain age, they're like, well, I'm too old now. Like they're not gonna like it's too late for me to change into this career.
Mhm.
This is not an area like that. I think of like actually like my friend who works for Signature Theater in New York. So I met her in grad school. She was a talent agent in LA for like 7 years. And then the next 10 years after that, she was a recruiter for a casino in Las Vegas. And then she was like, I missed theater. Like she studied theater in undergrad. She missed being in that world and wanted to move into arts admin. And then that's how she found the grad program that I was in. And then she applied for it and came and did the same thing. Um, and that's the thing is like she wasn't 25 and deciding to do this. Like she was in her late 30s when she decided to do this, and it was like now and like since then she's had two different really great roles in nonprofit theaters, one here in Chicago and then when she moved to New York
Right.
last year. So it's it's one of those things where like it's never too late to like come on over. Like we love anybody who's just excited and passionate about the work and ready to learn. That's the biggest thing is like you're going to learn stuff all the time.
Yeah. Do you think that being a fundraiser maybe isn't filled so quickly because in this country in particular, we're really bad about asking other people for money?
I think it's more because people like think that it's just like, and I think it does depend on the organization, but I think they think that it's entirely just like I'm sitting in front of a person and I am asking them for money or cold calling people to ask for money.
Yeah.
People really think it's just a lot of like almost like sort of almost like outbound salesy where you're just like constantly calling like 60 people a day being like, will you give us money, will you give us money?
Yeah.
And there are some pieces of that depending on your institution, and like not I don't know that it happens quite as much in the arts as it does in like higher ed. I think there's phonathons and like student phonathons where
Sure.
students will
Right.
call out things like that, but
Mhm.
it is a lot. It's not like I'm talking to someone every day asking them for money. A lot of it is crafting asks, like especially solicitation letters or emails, depending on the target group.
Right.
It's all some, so there's a lot of relationship building, especially for bigger donors,
Hmm.
where it's like you're not like, if you want to approach someone and you want to ask somebody for $50,000, you're not going to just it's not, you're not
Right.
going to ask them at the first meeting.
You
Like,
gotta build up to it.
um I hate this analogy, but it's an analogy that it honestly is very real. That like when you're like for major gifts, it's like a long-term relationship. Like
Sure.
you're trying to find the person, like you're not going to just like be like never call them after the first date. It's like you want this to last.
Right.
So
Yeah.
you're not going for the big ask, and it's not like you're going to ask someone to marry you on the first date. Like you're going to wait. You're going to get to the right spot and be like, okay, this is the time.
Yeah. You seem like you're in a very happy moment of your life. Will you give us $50,000?
Basically. Um, oh my gosh, I never thought this would happen.
And in public
Um,
too. Oh,
ah, um, but it really is like there is a big like being able to talk to somebody, even if it's somebody you don't know very well,
mhm.
but just being able to talk to somebody about, hey, what are your interests? Like, what are the things that you like?
Sure.
Let me tell you about some of the things we're working on. Like, I can tell you about some of the plays we've been commissioning. I can talk to you about our most recent production,
Mhm.
some of our education programs. It's like you find what people are interested in
Right.
and then speak to those things that your organization does and be like, oh, we do these things. Isn't that cool?
Yeah.
And it's so there are those more of that relationship building. And eventually, yes, there are some of those in-person asks.
Mhm.
I've done plenty of them. I don't think they're that hard. I think some of it too is because I'm like literally going into it, it's like the worst thing someone's gonna say is no.
Right.
And very rarely is someone going to be rude to your face to saying no. Like they might say, I'm not ready to do that this time. Great.
Right.
I have had a few encounters with donors in the past. Not really at my current job, but at past jobs where they're like, "Why would you be asking me for this?" No, absolutely not. And I'm like, "Whatever. You know what? That's you. Great. Have a good day. Thanks for
Yeah.
talking." And like that's the thing is like for the most part, it's like people are going to be very I've found are going to be fairly like, kind,
Sure.
even if they're saying no.
Right.
Um, but it is like you won't get any money if you don't ask. So that's kind of it
Right.
is part of the job, but it just takes different forms.
Mhm.
And a lot of it really is about strategy. It's like what do you think is going to get you to the yes?
Sure.
Depending on who the donor is, what level they give, or what their connection to the institution is.
Right.
It really is about thinking like every year it's like I come up with kind of like a timeline of like, okay, this is when I think we should do this solicitation letter. This is when I think we should do this one.
Mhm.
And each one we kind of have like a focus. So like right now, because everything has been so much like we're not doing anything right now because COVID. Now we've
Right.
actually started to like we are producing some more digital and content and some virtual productions.
Gotcha.
And so now that we have those things to talk about, like that's kind of what we actually recently sent out a solicitation, and I've been like it was great because we were able to talk about that and be
Right.
able to be like, hey, just so you know, there's these really cool things that are going on and what we're doing.
Right.
And so it's been an interesting time during all of this to be doing it, but it is, I think a lot of people think it is such a this like, oh god, I got to ask people for money, and it's like it's not.
Yeah.
It's very like, and there's some of it actually like a big part of our jobs is also saying thank you, which is the fun part.
Right. So like thank you letters, thank you emails.
Thank you calls, all that stuff. It's like putting on events that are all about gratitude. It's like doing certain things just to say thank you with
Sure.
no like other
String attached to
transactional
it.
attachment to it. It's just like, hey, we're so grateful for you. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing is like I think it has so many different pieces to it that I think a lot of people just don't know because it's not exactly like a subject in school.
Right.
So
Yeah. You don't walk into like first grade and they're like, so fundraising. Although then again, a lot of schools nowadays, that is something they talk about really early because they're like, hi, our school has no money. you're going to sell chocolate bars now.
Well, and that's because that's the other thing is a lot of people, their first introduction to fundraising is through like it's through like selling candy or Girl Scout cookies or
Mhm.
I
I sold
remember,
Christmas wreaths.
yep, Christmas wreaths, yes.
Mhm.
Or even I remember like my elementary school having like the market days where you go
Yes.
and like you get the like
Mhm.
frozen chicken cordon bleu or whatever,
Mhm.
and that was the thing is
Yeah.
it's a lot of, or like raffles, or like there's a lot of other things that I think you get exposed to that are fundraising, but it's just not it's not always what is happening when it's your job. It's
Right.
just kind of a different thing.
Yeah. So, have you had, like, you talked already about how like COVID has obviously impacted what you do, but like, has there ever been like an instance where you felt like specifically you've had issues at work or in your career because you were a woman, or have you managed to like dodge that happening?
I don't think I've ever had an issue because I'm a woman apart from, at least when it came to fundraising, apart
Mhm.
from like uh when I worked at a previous university, not Lawrence, that's
Mhm.
all I will say. Um where it was really just like I like just having to be around some alumni who were
Sure.
just like it's just a little creepy. Not like that they ever did anything bad, but just a little creepy. And that was more just because I was, I was a young lady,
Yeah.
and that kind of happens.
They were like
Um,
tiptoeing towards the line, but you were kind of, but not, they didn't quite get there, sort of thing.
yeah, and like it was never anything that like that like couldn't be handled. It was just that was not a space in which, like, there was a space in which when I tried to advocate for myself and other people on my team, it really just didn't go anywhere.
Sure.
And that's something that I think I do try to tell people, like, because this is something that I do and I think is important. I mean, wherever you work,
Mhm.
regardless of the field, is to really make sure you are advocating for yourself.
Right.
If there is something that is not okay or that you're not comfortable with, or if you are just like having an issue like with anything, like it's important to advocate for yourself. And especially something that I'm conscious of as especially a younger woman in the workforce is I try to advocate for other women in my departments
Sure.
wherever I am,
Right.
as well as, I mean, advocate for anybody on my team,
Mhm.
but in particular I find that that I'm part of a demographic that tends to just say, to push things aside and say, well, it is what it is, I'll just deal,
Right.
because we have to do that a lot. And I know that I also have, because I'm also white, I have way less of that crap to deal with
Right.
than
Than other
women
people.
of color. But
Right.
it is something that I think when you are, I think I've experienced much more ageism,
Sure.
in the sense of like being told, well, this is how we've always done it, so like, and you're new, so what would you know, kind of,
Step off.
like, and it's one of those things. And like I'm grateful I have never felt that in my current job, like I really haven't, and it's been fantastic. But
Right.
I think it's something that does come up a lot, is that people think that that we millennials are coming in and just being like, oh, we need to do everything different and we want to change everything you do. And it's like, no, we just want to bring our ideas and have our ideas heard. Like,
We really just want to nap at work, and sometimes we do really great things, but only when we feel like it. So
but it is the thing is, it's like I found that I know that when I've advocated for other people in it, and have also said like, hey, like I've experienced this, and this other person who said I can say it, like, obviously making
right.
sure if you're advocating for someone they're okay with it,
Yeah,
but
you're not just like springing it on them.
like, so and so said this, did you know? But no, being a good advocate, but it is, but like I've been in work situations where a coworker who'd been at that company longer, uh and was just like, well, it's just been this way, nothing I've ever said has ever done anything. I'm like, well, can I say something, because it's bothering me too, and can I mention that you've also said that this is an issue?
Right.
And she's like, yeah. And then it's like when I bring it to the table, like it's because it's more than one person saying, hey, this is not okay, and I don't let it go.
Mhm.
Like, I'm not going to just let them forget about it. Like, I will follow up the next week and say, hey, so have you done anything about this yet?
Yeah.
Hey, like, where are we at with this?
Mhm.
And it's all in pursuit of the greater good of like, it's not just like me being like, well, I want this way because this is what I want. It's like wanting to make sure a workspace is safe for everybody, that
Mhm.
everybody is getting the resources they need, and making sure just everyone feels like, at least like, if not like, I don't want anyone to feel dread coming to work, at least if I can make it feel just like mediocre, if not better, hopefully good, but just,
Yeah.
it's just making it a good space for people. And I know that, and I even like, I will tell, there's a lot of, especially female friends that I've talked to when they have been applying for like a job or interviewing and they get a job offer.
Mhm.
And then I have talked them through how to negotiate, because I never negotiated on my first big girl job out of college.
Right.
Because I was just like, oh my God, I got a job.
Yeah.
Um, and
Yay.
yes, but I have since learned how to properly negotiate in a way that is like, because again, it's like the worst thing that someone's going to tell you if you ask for more money is no. So
Right.
great.
Exactly. You might as well just ask.
Another example of asking for money. um, but it is just like I think there's this hesitation, especially in our generation, of like, I don't want to ask for more money because I'm lucky I have a job, because we watched 2008 happen and
Right.
how so many people had a hard time getting jobs,
Mhm.
that we were that we were just like, oh my God, thank God I have a job. And it's something I feel more women need to negotiate, because it is like, statistics out there show we don't negotiate enough. And
And you guys don't make as much money as men do, and it's probably because you
exactly.
guys aren't negotiating. Not to say that that's the reason, because it's obviously not the only reason, but like, and to kind of go along with that, when I was growing up, we were told not to talk about that.
Mm-hmm.
And like, and that, and then I've gotten older, I've realized, and I've gotten some help from other people in realizing this, but the reason we've been told for so long not to talk about that is because the adults who are now making the rules don't want us to know that we're all getting paid differently, because
Yep.
that's how they're managing to, you know, divide and conquer, or whatever, whatever strategy it is they're
Oh yeah.
out.
And yeah.
Exactly. It's like the last job I did, the one before I have the one now, like I got hired in June and I was a janitor, and and they were paying me like, I don't know, like $11 an hour or something like that, which, isn't great, but whatever. But like I found out, I don't know, I think 2 weeks in, that like three of the people I'd been working with who had been there for like 4 or 5 years, I was making more than them. And it was like, right, but they were all women, and two of them only spoke Spanish. And so they can't advocate for themselves. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's like, well, yeah, of course they're only paying them, like it
Yep.
was like $9 an hour, because they didn't know it. They couldn't do anything about it. And so boys and girls, advocate for yourselves.
Yes. And that's the
Yeah.
thing, is that's why, like, I actually recently had a friend who, she had been a student that I had worked with at one of my previous jobs, and and she had just gotten an offer for promotion at her job. And so she had gotten the offer letter, and she's like, how do I do this? What do I do? And I'm like, okay, first of all, figure out the number that you want to put back to them. Um,
Right.
add a little more to it, and then put it back to them.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, because that's the thing, is I want to make sure that anybody I know knows that they can do that.
Mhm.
Like in some places, like I was offered a job right after grad school that I didn't take, because the money they offered me was less than what I made when I worked at Lawrence, which is in Appleton, Wisconsin, not Chicago,
Oh,
Illinois.
boy.
Let's
Yeah.
think about that a second.
Right.
And I could just tell it, like something in my gut, it didn't feel right, and they
Right.
would not negotiate at all, because I was like, is there any room to budget on this? Which I've also learned, never ask for room, just throw a number out.
Demand it. Yeah.
Just be like, this is what I think I should get based on my experience, and
Mhm.
and what this role requires, and then see what they say.
Right. Well, and if they really do want and value your experience and your abilities, and or if they're promoting you or they're saying they want to promote you, clearly that means that they like what you do and how you do it. Then they should be willing to meet you at least halfway on your request, right? You know, if they're saying, I'm going to pay you this much, and you say, well, what about this? You know, if they're not even willing to budge a little bit, then that shows that they don't actually really trust you that much. They just want to make you feel like, you know, they trust you.
And the other thing that is also true, it's like sometimes there are situations where a company truly can't budge, but don't
Right.
assume that a nonprofit can't budge
Mhm.
on pay. Don't assume it. Let them tell you that.
Right.
And the other thing too is like it's also like if a company isn't going to budge on it, it's also okay to still take the job if you feel it's something that it's still you're getting paid for your time, that you feel is still at least a good amount to be paid for your time. Obviously sometimes you just need a job, been there. But also if it's a job where the experience is going to be also worthwhile for you, like what you're going to learn and get out of it, that's okay too. It just don't accept until you have tried to get more money, because
Right.
most companies are going to expect you to negotiate. Most do.
Yeah. Unless you want to be a teacher, in which don't try to negotiate because they'll just scoff at you.
Or there are some places that they're never going to do that because of other reasons, like for example, where for those of you who don't know, my fiance Pat, he works for the city of Chicago, and because city of Chicago employees are part of a union,
right,
the union sets a lot of those things. So that is something where that's not exactly where you can be like, I want more money. Well, too bad. Everyone else who does this job makes the exact same as you. So here you go.
So deal with it.
But it's like, it truly is like it is a minefield, but don't be afraid to, the moral of the story, kids, don't be afraid to advocate for yourself.
Don't be afraid to step on mines. Wait, oh, that's not right. Never mind.
Hey, that was not the analogy I went for. Oh
no! We're teaching kids the wrong things here, Claire. Awesome. Okay, so you've talked about some of the things you've been working on. Are there anything, like, what are some of the things that your theater is doing that you're particularly proud of, that you've been kind of pushing and advocating for? Like, you talked about some virtual theater, is there like anything in particular where like, ooh, this is cool?
One thing I will say is that I've just been really grateful for our leadership's transparency during all of this. They've been really good about in kind of regular points throughout this. They've done a good job of checking in with us to say, hey, here's where we're at with stuff. This is stuff that we're talking about, like with the board. Like, here's where we're at with programming. Here's where we're at with fundraising. Here's where we're at with this. And I think they've been doing a good job of planning for not just to get us through this, but to get us to 2 years from now. It's thinking to like for like the last, like being a lasting organization and not just here for now. That's been really great. And so, and I think the other thing that, I mean, I'm just really excited about how flexible we've been with programming this year. So when we announced our season, it was we'd been actually getting ready to announce our season literally the week that everything shut down.
Oh no.
And we were like, okay, let's just step back a second. And I will say, like, the artistic team did a really good job with crafting kind of a new season that we announced at the end of May, where we announced 4 titles with no dates. Gotcha. So wanting to be able to be flexible and telling people like, hey, if you want to renew your subscription, great. We want you to know that like we will be bringing you something. This is what we're planning right now. We're not going to release dates until we can better know when we can actually do stuff, because it's like, we don't want to promise you a play in November if the virus says no, and the virus said no. So so that's where I think, and then as we've seen kind of the timeline shift of when we think everything might go back to sort of go back to normal. We recently announced a modification to that season that is sort of a hybrid model. So we at Halloween released 4 spooky stories that were read by Chicago artists, which was really cool. So
Cool.
sort of an audio, something to just enjoy from home.
Hmm.
We have a really exciting Two Scrooges production coming up in early December. So it's 2 virtual versions of A Christmas Carol.
Okay.
One is our artistic director. It's his one-man version that he's done in the past, but we're actually recording it, him doing it live. So we have a whole like COVID testing set up for all of that
Right.
production. But that'll be like an on-demand, watch when you want thing.
Okay.
And then we partnered with a group called Manual Cinema that's known for their fantastic shadow puppetry.
Oh,
So they have a version of A Christmas Carol they will be doing under our umbrella. And that's going to be live streamed. So it's like, so it'll be a specific time you watch.
gotcha. Okay.
So they do it live, but then you get to watch from home, which is cool.
That is
And then we have 4 productions coming in 2021 as kind of the closing out of the season. 2 we plan to do virtually, and 2 we plan to do live.
okay.
Uh, and some of that may have to change again. And I think that's kind of been the beauty of not releasing things with dates is we can change and we
Right.
can say like, hey, here's what's happening, here's what we're doing. And it's been a weird year, but I think we've rolled with it really well.
Hmm. I think that's like one of the cool things about this. I mean, not that the virus is good or anything, but like one of the nice things about the virus is it's shown just how like creative and flexible we really can be. Because
Mm-hmm.
without it, we were just like, this is how it's going to be, and this is just deal with that because that's what we're doing. And now everybody's like, it's all good. We're going to be real flexible, and like, and it's like, why couldn't we be this way all the time?
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of, it's really interesting to see which, I guess, businesses and organizations are willing to be that flexible and which
Mm-hmm.
ones aren't. And so it's, I feel like it's really kind of showing which groups are on top of their stuff and which groups aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like yours obviously is doing a great job being,
Yeah.
yeah.
I think the other thing I've appreciated too is that like we've been very focused on just staff and artists and patrons safety,
Mhm.
not only with like making some like updates to our theater space so that one day when people can come back, there will be additional things that will help people feel more comfortable and more safe
Right.
in that environment. But also just being able to know that like I can work from home and work from home for the duration. I
Right.
have been to the office to do some occasional like printing or like gathering of certain things, but
Mhm.
that's where we actually do have like a tracking system for like who's in the office when and like limiting the number of people there.
Right.
So that way we also know if someone is there and someone gets something, then we
We
kind of know
know where they got it from.
we know who else was in contact with them when, and especially if they've been at the office, that kind of, which thankfully so far no issues,
Right.
um but I think they've done a really good job of like keeping safety for not only patrons but for like staff and artists at the forefront.
Gotcha. Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so going off of that then, is there any like, I know that like theater, like all sorts of things has like trends and like like music and all sorts of stuff. So is there like a big trend in theater right now, and what is it?
That's a good question. I mean, it's really hard right now to say that there's anything other than like the trend is to figure out how to do virtual shows.
Sure.
Um, and like I've seen different companies do it different ways.
Mhm.
But I think there's been a lot of like, because some of it depends too, because like a lot of theaters have different focuses. Like it's our name, Writers Theater. We're very focused on we are very focused on the word and the artist, and
Sure.
so playwrights and like new works as well as like classics, and reinvented classics,
Right.
are things that are we're very focused on.
Mhm.
um and I think if anything, a big trend, which I think is a good one and well overdue, is really being more conscious about representation,
Sure.
and not only on stage but off stage,
Hmm.
um, as well as providing, as well as I think a lot of theaters, like, there have been a lot of things that have happened this year that have, and in years past, so that I think are finally theaters are in a space of like, we have to actually really think about, how are we best supporting, um, not only the artists but the staff, and other patrons that come into our space, that have traditionally been underrepresented in the theater.
Sure.
And so I think, like, how can we best support those people, as well as like, I think something that, 10 years ago, a lot of theaters you could see would be the theaters would be like, okay, we're doing all these plays, and then here's our, August Wilson play for the year. Like,
Right.
it's kind of like a, like, that's not enough to say like you're being representative. Like, you need to think about,
It's
it's
got to
like,
be consistent over the course of the year.
exactly.
Yeah.
And really, and also like I appreciate that I see more and more, companies doing classic works that are rethinking not only like, how can we adapt this work to be better representative today, because there's so many classic works that are like just straight up like 3 hours long, and you're like, do I want to sit through a 3 hour play? I don't know.
Obviously.
But also like rethinking, like, we did a really wonderful, adaptation last year of, Henrik Ibsen's A Doll's House,
Oh, I love
which,
that play.
oh my god, it's so good. But it's an adaptation. It was a 90-minute adaptation, which was like excellent.
Hmm.
Um, but it was really lovely, because it not only in the sense that it was cast, it was cast to really, like, it didn't matter that it where it was taking place or when. We're
Yeah.
going to have the best actors be in these roles.
Right.
And what was really great about it is that it felt more current while still being a product of its time.
Sure.
Like, it really gave, like, more authenticity and agency to these characters, and like, it goes to show that like classic work is classic for a reason, but it
Right.
doesn't mean we can't do other things with it. It's like,
Hmm.
not like we don't have to do, like, a Shakespeare play and have everyone be white. We don't need to do that.
Right. Or them all
It,
be men.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's like, let's see how we can, like, I think a lot of theaters are being more open and inclusive, or at least trying, which is a step in the right direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Woo. Okay.
Whoa!
Woo. Um, okay, so let's see here. What else do I want to talk to Claire about? Okay, so if someone came up to you, like middle school age, high school age, and they're like, I'm in my high school theater and I love it so much and blah 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 blah, and that they want to be part of theater in some way. What would your advice be to them? How would they want it? How would you tell them to go about getting to that place for them?
Yeah, I think some of it is just jumping in and trying it, whether that's performing, um, whether that's doing, more of some of the more technical sides as far as like costume design, set design, lighting design. Just find opportunities and just jump in and try it. Um, Also, don't be afraid to, if you really want to pursue theater as a degree, like theater performance, do it. um, I think that there are plenty of really great like theater conservatories that only focus on theater, and I think that is a really valuable thing. I'm thankful though that my experience and my theater education came out of a liberal arts college because I had the opportunity to study other things
Right.
as well as have that education. I felt it was a little more well-rounded for me because I was able to, and encouraged by my advisor to take classes outside of theater that would, inform my theater education. So
Sure.
like I think I remember my first meeting with my advisor, and he wrote down like four things. He's like, these are my requirements of my advisees. And what it was like taking a history class that was like prior to the 1900s, taking a history class that is like 1900s or newer, as well as taking like a religious studies class as
Mhm.
well as an art history class.
Right.
Uh, and those are all things because like 'cause it's all things that inform theater because
Right.
there are plays that take so many plays that take place throughout history at different
Mhm.
eras at different times, and it's a lot of stuff that's also valuable if you are someone who goes into more of the either dramaturgical or design side of things, because it really does help you understand, okay, this is what this era looked like, or how to search for those things.
Right.
um, so for me, I think if people are looking at college, I think I appreciated having that sort of like either liberal arts or not necessarily going to a theater program that is a conservatory where like everything you do is theater.
Right.
There are plenty of people that come out of those programs and are very successful, and that's the thing that they wanted to do and they only want to be in there, and that's a
Right.
beautiful thing too. I just know that for me, liberal arts was the way to go. um and that space, smaller town, you can find opportunities to do that. Just you just might have to do a little more digging.
Right.
And it was kind of funny because like I fell into fundraising, like tripping into it almost, because I had reached it was my sophomore year, and I was reaching out to somebody I knew who was the head of the education department at the Milwaukee Repertory Theater at the
Okay.
time. And because I had done the previous summer, I'd done like a 2-week intensive program that was running. So I'd reached out to her being like, hey, do you have any summer internships? Because I'm curious, like, I'm really interested in theater admin, and I loved like this education program last summer. Like, and she happened to be on maternity leave when I sent that email. So it ended up getting bumped over to the director of development,
Uh-huh.
and she was like, hey, so
Of
she's
course
on
you
maternity
do.
leave, but we have internships.
Yeah.
And I was like, sure, why not? And like, I had no clue what I was like, development, great. I looked it up. I was like, okay, fundraising, sure, let's just check it out.
Yeah.
And I interviewed, I got the job, and I interned there that summer. And I think it was the thing that I was like, okay, this is cool. And then that fall, I studied abroad in London,
Mhm.
and as part of that program, I applied to do an internship. And they place you in one,
Sure.
and I literally wrote a thing that said, "Okay, I just did a fundraising internship, like really liked it, but I want to get another
I'll do
experience,
something else.
something else." And it really was just I wanted to see, like, I wanted to try marketing was the one I was like, a marketing internship would be really great, just because I would like to see what that side is like. Got placed in a development internship, which honestly was great. Like it was because a
Right.
lot of that role focused on completely different work that I did in the first one. And
Mhm.
again, it's where like fundraising, there's so many different ways to go with it that I did learn a lot in those first two internships, and then it just kind of kept happening from there. Um,
You couldn't get away.
couldn't get away. So it is great to just try things, apply for internships, and I also recommend don't be afraid of trying things that are outside of a theater. If you just because like I know for me, arts in general and culture in general are things that I appreciate. Like Like when I was applying for jobs after grad school, I applied to like museums and music organizations and kind of everything in between. Just
Mhm.
because for me, it's like it's about the art itself. Like I love just being around like all of that.
Right.
So, but when I was applying for all those jobs, and it was getting closer to like, okay, I really just need a job. Somebody, anybody, give me a job. Um, the one that I got offered was at a higher ed institution. And so it was going back to some of the work I'd done before.
Hmm.
And while it wasn't exactly what I wanted to do, it was a good job and I still got really good experience. And
Right.
it's what ended up leading me to this job and where I am
Hmm.
now.
Right.
So don't be afraid to take opportunities, even especially if you're looking at fundraising in particular.
Hmm.
Every nonprofit needs fundraisers. Like that's always going to be part of it.
Right.
And so don't be afraid to look for opportunities in other places, but also know your passion. Like I remember one of the jobs I applied for and interviewed for, and I probably would have taken if I had gotten it because it was still interesting, but
Mhm.
like it was fundraising for a hospital, which was not it it was not exactly my passion. Like I still would have done it. Still would have been a really good job. And it was focused in an area of medicine that was a little more personal to me because it was like neurological diseases. And
Sure.
like my grandmother had Parkinson's, and
Mhm.
um, my grandpa on my other side of the family has Parkinson's. So it was like, cool, I'm fundraising that to help support those departments that help people with those things. And like that's personal and a connection. But it really, you do need the passion for whatever you're fundraising for. Otherwise, you're going to hate it.
Yeah, it's gonna be really hard to raise money for something you don't like.
Exactly. So yeah, I would recommend is just jump in and try things.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same thing when I was doing history. I ended up doing it because I wanted to be a teacher, but like I took economics classes and I took government courses and I took a sociology class and I took an anthropology class and like all these different things, and I even took like a religious studies class, and all those things made me a better historian, even if they're not necessarily related. And obviously theater is the same way. Knowing how to act and how to be a set designer and is all very important if you want to go into theater, but you need to know the things that are going to inform all the aspects of it, because no play is written in a vacuum, right?
Exactly.
There's things happening, like going back to like Ibsen, all of his plays have these great historical and political
Mm-hmm.
backgrounds to them, and if you can't navigate through that, you're going to have a really hard time being in that play or being a part of it. And the same goes for really anything that you want to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know whether you're a young lady or a young man.
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. No, young man, you just go ahead and barrel through and you'll be fine. You've
No.
got privilege on your side. You're fine. um, awesome. Okay. I think I've covered everything I wanted to talk about. Is there anything that you just are like, yes, this is my time. I'm gonna be on the internet. Like I'm gonna say it right
On the
now.
internet.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm also on the internet because from when I worked at Lawrence, there are videos of me doing a segment for Lawrence's first Giving Day.
Oh, are those findable?
They're findable. You can find them. It's Where's Claire.
I'm gonna link them on my website. You're gonna.
The funny
Where's
thing is
Claire, huh?
both Pat and I have Lawrence related videos. Because he also did like a philanthropy tour of Lawrence that they filmed.
Right. I remember
You
that
can
one.
also find him on there too, which is it's hysterical that both of us have them. Um,
Fantastic.
yeah, I mean, the biggest thing that I wanted to say is like advocate for yourself, which we talked about a lot, is
Hmm.
important. Something else I want to bring up, which I will completely credit one of my colleagues, Sierra Carlson, who is she's a fantastic grant writer. She's also a dramaturg, and she's just an all around wonderful human. But something that she during this pandemic actually wrote a really lovely essay on this topic. But I think something that definitely comes up in the arts a lot is this sort of idea that that like because it's because you love this thing, you should give it everything you have. Like, you should give all your energy, all of your time, and all of this to it, because we do this because we love it.
Mhm.
And the thing is like, that's all well and good, but you can't give all you have if you have nothing to give. So it's important to take care of yourself.
Mhm.
Setting, and I think especially setting boundaries is important, especially if you're a salaried worker. I think this is true of anyone who's salaried, but it's important to set boundaries, to say, I am not going to check my email during these hours. When I leave work, I am leaving work. And it's especially true now when so many of us are working from home.
Right.
Those that are lucky enough to work from home, I'm very happy that I have, and my job is able to do this.
Mhm.
But it's so easy to just like flip it open and just start doing stuff, and then be like, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh God, where did the day go? And now it's like 10 p.m. How did that happen?
And I haven't eaten today, and then because I've been doing this
It
work.
is, I think it's always important to set boundaries,
Mhm.
because your time is valuable, and you need that time to also recharge, reset, so that you can put in your best work the next day.
Mhm.
If you don't take that time for yourself, then you're just going to burn out. And also, recommending a book I have not read yet, but everyone I know like recently has read it. It's a book called Burnout.
Oh, I've heard of
Check
that
it
one.
out. Yeah,
Yeah.
literally everyone I've talked to in the past like week has been like, "Have you read this book yet?" And I'm like, "No, I will. Just I need time, guys." Um,
It probably
but
describes my life a couple years ago, because that
yes, it
definitely
does.
happened.
I remember that.
It was a rough time.
And that's okay. We go through rough times. It
Yeah.
happens.
Mhm.
Like there was a crossover time. It was that time right after I graduated from grad school in 2017. There was like a crossover time where Pat and I were both unemployed, as we say.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's a time when we knew like, okay, we definitely can be together forever, because we were able to like see each other every day, all the time, and never get sick of each other. So it worked.
So it
But
worked
no,
out.
it truly is it's important to take care of ourselves, whatever way that is. Taking care of yourself might mean going and doing some yoga. It might mean eating mac and cheese. Whatever you need to do, just do it.
Right. Mhm.
Um, and I think I've always been fairly good at setting boundaries with when of like, okay, I'm done working. Like we're done.
Right.
This is done. Like we're not thinking about it until tomorrow.
Mhm.
Um, I have had plenty of friends and colleagues, especially in this industry, that have a hard time doing that, and are just like, oh, I'm just going to do this one thing real quick, and that turns into 10 things,
Right.
and then you've suddenly worked like 60 to 80 hours in a week, and you're like, okay, now what's happening? And it is just so important to take care of yourself. Yeah, and I know that's the kind of big thing. Theater's cool. We need more good people.
Yeah.
So keep coming.
Yeah. And just I'm going to speak to that just a little bit as someone who has done exactly what Claire was just describing and burnt themselves out 2 years into what they thought their career was going to be. It 100%, I'm absolutely awful at setting boundaries like that. And I've learned that about myself. And that's why I've specifically found jobs now where I literally, there's nothing for me to think about when I'm done working. Like I need that for myself, because if I can't set that boundary, I had to make sure that the boundary was built into the job. And so that's, I guess, to kind of add on to what you're saying, is don't just take care of yourself, but learn about yourself
Mm-hmm.
and figure out where your boundaries need to be so that you can set them. Because if you don't know what your limit is, not to say that you should burn yourself out and go through whatever, all the stuff I had to go through, but like you gotta push yourself to a point where you feel like, okay, this is where I need to draw this line. And then after that, you can set those boundaries and be the successful advocating whatever it is you want to be. And a great time to do that, which I wish I had done it then, would be in college, where you have a safety net to fall into instead of when you're, you know, in your career and
Oh my
like
God.
you have a
Yeah.
son and a family and you're like, oh no.
I think so something I think is really funny is I feel like I've just done everything in my life has been like just ahead of schedule in the sense of like I was always like advanced in like math and like English or whatever in school. I was always in like advanced classes, all this stuff. But I feel like I had my like quarter life crisis when I was like 16. Because I literally like I had this total freak out moment over an English paper and realized that that was when I had the moment of like, if I don't have an A, it's okay. And it was just this like moment there. I'm like, you know what? I'm just like I'm not going to kill myself over this stuff. Like I'm not going to like I'm going to do the work and I'm going to take the time that any like project or assignment needs, but I'm not going to like destroy my own mental health by doing so.
Mm-hmm.
And so I kind of had that happen my sophomore year of high school. So I knew when I went to college, I was like, okay, I'm going to like slowly add things like activities to like my schedule. I'm not going to do because I'm like I know myself. If I sign up for 10 things like during welcome week and
I'm gonna do
orientation,
all those
I'm gonna
things.
do all of them and it's gonna be bad. So
Yeah.
I was like, I need to be able to give myself all to one thing first, and then we'll add a thing, and then we'll add a thing, and then
Right.
we'll find the balance.
Yeah.
And that's what worked for me. And I
Mhm.
figured I was fortunate I figured it out young.
Right.
It is truly like figure out how you work, how you think,
Mhm.
how you need to kind of set up your life, and then do it.
Right. Yeah. And it's all about learning about yourself. And
Yeah.
like, and if you're in that age group, 13 to 18, that's your chance to really kind of explore those things in a place where it's really safe. I was a middle school teacher, and these kids would come to me and they're like, my life is falling apart. And I was like, girl, you're 13. You don't have a life yet. It's not falling apart. It's not that big a deal. Or, like I had these kids who'd come to me and be like, I have a 94%. My parents are going to kill me. And I'm like, calm down. Like, you have a 94 and like you're taking geometry as a seventh grader. Like, chill.
Like, yeah, well, it's like my parents used to joke when I'd come home from school and be like, "Oh, hey, I got this paper back and I got like a 98," and they'll be like, "Don't you think if you tried a little harder, you could have gotten 100?" Or like if I get 100, they'll be like, "Don't you think if you tried a little harder, you could have gotten 104?" Like completely joking.
Right.
Because I think that some of the too is like if you are like younger and like you're still in school, like talk to your parents if you are feeling stressed, because that's what I did. Is I immediately was like, mom, dad, I'm having a breakdown, what do I do?
Right.
And talk to your parents about like, okay, like what, like how do I deal with this, how do I figure it out? And
Mhm.
I mean I'm constantly telling my parents how grateful I am for them and how wonderful they are, because i I definitely lucked out when it came to parents. Because they've always wanted me to do well,
Mhm.
but never at the never sacrificing like my personal well-being.
Right.
And so it's like so it's to them, it's like I still remember getting my first grades back from the first term at Lawrence, and because I was a nerd in high school and got all A's, nerd. But and in good company. But I remember like that first term I didn't have all A's. Like I mean I had like an A and I'm A minus and like a B plus or a B, and I'm like, that's fine. I
Yeah.
would because
I'm good.
um, but the funny thing is my mom was like, "Are you okay? Are you good?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm good." And she's like, "Okay, great." She's like, "I'm proud of you. This is good." And I'm like, "I
Yeah.
know." And she's like, "But I didn't know it would happen because you've only ever gotten like A's like as your final grades." I'm like, "Yeah, but I'm like, it's college. It's different.
Right.
It's and the thing is like I was like I like and I think it's something that my parents also encouraged for me is like as part of college, it's not just about getting the grades, like which grades are important and you do want to like put in your best effort, but it's all about learning stuff and
Right.
also like making friends and like going to the movies and having game nights like when you're older, go to the VR or like to the
Right.
like your campus bar or whatever, but
Yeah.
like
Getting that experience, being able to,
yeah.
yeah, it's you're learning the skills you're going to need to do all the other things you're going to do in life, not just manage a theater or be a teacher or
Exactly.
right.
Because it like, and it's like just as important to have that the experiences, because you learn a lot from those things too, from those like friendships and relationships and like making the memories. It's all good.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Yeah, and then you end up on cool YouTube series.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Claire, for coming on.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, because you are fantastic and you are female and you're a role model. And now you're going to be on the internet, not just for Lawrence. So
On
congratulations.
the internet. Oh, that's awesome. No, thank
Yeah,
you for inviting me to do this. I think
absolutely.
this is really lovely. And something else I will say, is when I was telling somebody today that I was going to be doing this, and I was like, the thing that I love about you so much is that are you are the prime example of a feminist ally. You're somebody who's like, you constantly are posting things to be like, this is why like we need to, this is why we need equal pay. This is how women should be treated. This is like toxic masculinity is not cool. And like you are the person who is like a true ally, and I appreciate that. So
Well, thank you.
yeah.
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 Mm-hmm. Awesome. All right. Well, I won't bore the internet with the rest of our ramblings, but bye everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Uh, thanks for listening to Claire talk about her stuff. Next time we'll talk about somebody else's stuff. It'll be great.
Yeah.
Yeah. See ya.